What is up, guys? Coop here, and we're back at it again with Divinity Original Sin 2. So, I know it's been a little bit of a break. I know I've been promising that we're going to have mods every single week. I had my birthday party weekend going on. A lot of craziness went down. A lot of fun adventures happened, but it's time we get back on track. So, today we've got an awesome mod of the Dualist by a newer creator I have not seen before on the modded community. So, I figured I'd give it a shot, see how the balancing is, see how this class really works. It seems really interesting. So, without further ado, let's jump in and check out the Dualist. Today's mod that we're checking out is by Forest Mix. It's basically a Dualist class. This is a class where you focus on having only one type of weapon. So, one hand with nothing in the other hand, so not dual wielding or anything. Though this mod does allow for dual wielding, this is mainly focused on using just one type of weapon. It focuses mainly on Scoundral and Warfare, so giving you a really fun, unique gameplay for, frankly, a weapon combination that isn't really seen in the game. So I'm very excited to see what this mod has to offer, and be sure to give this creator a shout out in the comments if my video recommended it to you. Anyways, let's jump into the build. Alright, so let's check out character creation with the Dualist. Does it really fit the bill? Is it a good build overall? And absolutely, the stats that they give you right off the bat with finesse and wits are perfect for this occasion. On top of that, it gives you the Warfare and Scoundral you need, requiring for the spells. So, jumping forward, it's actually not that bad. You can change your persuasion thing, civil abilities, I mean, they kind of fit with whatever you have going on with your party. But absolutely a great start to this mod. So I'm very impressed, especially with this being a newer creator I have not seen before. So going forward, they have a few different spells here. They have Corpse to Corpse, which basically allows you to do a advancing lunge with your blade, hitting all enemies in your path. So kind of like a charge from what it seems like. I haven't quite seen it yet. But basically it deals a massive amount of physical damage, and anybody it goes through, it causes a chance of adding a bleed. Now keep in mind that is resisted by physical damage, so you will have to obviously destroy their armor if you want to use the bleed effect, but an absolutely awesome way of applying bleeds through a charge, which is interesting. I really like that. The next one that it gives you is Flying Cuts, which basically allows you to toss 3 daggers and deal some damage with them, causing bleeds on the target. So you're starting to see a theme here of a lot of times trying to apply bleeds. Absolutely awesome. So very unique playstyle so far. And then the last one is Fleche, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which basically you skillfully put your blade through the enemy's armor, dealing piercing damage. So this means that, say like their magical armor is destroyed and they have like no magical armor and they have a very low health. Even though they have physical armor, this is direct damage to their health. Really awesome, especially if any of them have that hothead trait going for them. Now, this is really cool because in addition to that, if they have no armor to pierce, it deals additional bleeding damage. So, very cool build so far. And then the talent they actually start you off with is Executioner. Another really great talent that fits the bill perfectly going forward. So, absolutely a great start to this build, and I don't even think you really need to change anything. They've got it all down pretty much to a science. So let's jump in and actually see what spells and how exactly you want to build this character. Let's see what they have going on here. Alrighty, so let's actually jump into the build that I did for the Dualist. This is based off of a level 15 character, so obviously just kind of follow roughly with what I did here. So what I did for my character here is basically I got myself up to 20 finesse and casually put a few points into wits along the way. So basically I tried to get my finesse up a few points, and then I would try to get up another 10% into my crit. So that way I had a high amount of crit, so that way I could do some more damage, especially with the Scoundral adding more to the crit multiplier, to the point where I am now, where I basically now have a 200% crit multiplier with my damage. Very awesome. Now, I highly suggest so far human characters. They seem to be probably the best fit for the Dualist. However, most of the other races do kind of work as well. With the exception of Beast, he's kind of like, yeah, he's got sturdy, but everything else is kind of like a little shaky there. The humans seem to have the best part because they do get that initial 5% crit multiplier, which is very helpful for this build going forward. So in my casual playthrough of the first act, it seemed like that was probably one of the better solutions out there. Now, actually jumping forward, basically finesse seems to be kind of like the main stat, but I did try to get wits up high enough to where it really was nice. Now you can one-hand daggers as well. You can dual wield if you want. However, I really tried to stick with the philosophy that he was going for here, so I made sure that I stuck with my nice little weapon here of my one-handed sword. So really trying to fit in and see if this build matches with the sort of character identity that he really wanted them to have. Now going forward, I did pick up a few things along the way. So for the level 15 character, I did add 3 into Necromancy, just to give us a little bit of survival aspects in the mix. Now, obviously, we're not going to be using any of the Necromancy spells in today's video. You can add them if you would like, such as Shackles of Pain, stuff like that. But I did just mainly add it for survival because you're going to be doing massive damage with those crits, and you want to make sure that you heal a lot from that crit. So allowing that to really get you up with a good amount of health here. Now next, I obviously put more points into Scoundral than Warfare, but I did not negate Warfare. So basically with Scoundral, I really wanted to get up to that 40% crit multiplier and that high, intense movement speed, so that way we could get to wherever we really wanted to get on the battlefield, and playing kind of like a rogue, but more like a warrior rogue. So very interesting kind of style. I almost like to think of Bronn from Game of Thrones. It's kind of like the play style of how you want to do this. Now, next I obviously put points into Warfare because, well, it requires it, and then in addition to that, it gives us access to the Warfare tree. But in today's video, we're mainly just going to be focusing on the Dualist spells themselves, but basically that is something to take into account, that you can pick up some of the Warfare stuff, such as all the nice little stuns it comes with. But I mainly took this because it increases our damage. So having the Scoundral to give us that high crit, and having the Warfare to really increase that amount of damage, increasing the amount of that powerful crits going forward. As for civil abilities, pick whatever the hell your campaign really needs. For talents, now talents is kind of important going forward. Executioner was obviously a good pick. You kill something, you get a few extra action points. You have that movement to where you can really travel anywhere that you need to with all the points in Scoundral. I did choose Hothead. I chose Hothead because obviously I want to have that higher crit chance and that accuracy. With having a single weapon, usually your accuracy was about 90%. So having it to where you don't have to worry about a 1 in 10 chance of missing is very important. You can substitute this by putting a point into single-handed here in combat abilities, but I found that kind of not as good as putting a point into Warfare to get some of the higher Warfare stuff going on later on. You can do that, it is up to you. I just chose Warfare because I wanted to be able to get all the stuff that Warfare had to offer. Now also, you know, you have your nice little thing here of giving yourself a higher percent of crit and adding that crit multiplier, making the humans really good for this. I did add Picture of Health because we are adding so many points into Warfare to add that damage, giving another incentive to why I put points into Warfare. Even if we don't pick up the Warfare skills along the way, it is helpful to add a little bit of more survivability to you. Especially in Act 2, it can be very brutal when going forward and jumping into the fray. I added Opportunist. Opportunist was one I added later on after I started adding a few points into Necromancy. Because basically with adding Necromancy, you want to make sure that you heal as much as possible, not only from your attacks, but when enemies run by you. And on top of that, having another chance of doing some crit damage and destroying that physical armor is also very important as well. Now, jumping forward, what are some other good talents that you could use as well? Obviously, Bigger and Better, All Skilled Up are pretty nice if you're struggling for points. One of the things I do like to do sometimes is choose All Scaled Up in the beginning of Act 1, and then later on when Act 2 starts and you have that lovely mirror to respec, you can get rid of that in accordance to what you really need at the time. Bigger and Better if you just want to get up to that higher crit chance with Wits, and you don't really want to put all of your points into Wits, it's another incentive way to get that as well. Comeback Hit is one that I I know a lot of the people in the community don't really like, but I do like that ability as well because it allows you to be able to still stick in the fray and keep your turn in the turn order. So that's one to look at as well. Another one that's really good for survivability, especially with all that movement speed and really trying to focus down on targets that you need, is Escapist, allowing yourself to not really have to worry about attacks of opportunity. So that is something to keep into the fray. Now obviously there's a few other ones here like Leech that are pretty decent, but Leech doesn't scale as well later on. Lone Wolf is obviously really good if you want to have a single character. Parry Master is not useful for this because you're not dual wielding, but if you do decide to dual wield with the Dualist, it is a way of doing it. The mod does allow that. However, it was really with the incentive of being one-handed. So just keep that in mind, especially going forward. But there's a lot of different ones out here. Torturer is pretty good because it allows you to add a little bit more to your bleeding effects. So it causes you to no longer be blocked by magical and physical armor, and the duration is extended by 1 turn. So that is one I would definitely pick up later on. Adding it to where your bleeds from all of your different spells doesn't even get affected by magical armor and physical armor is really nice. Honestly, if you are in a pretty set place and you don't have to worry so much about survivability, Torture is awesome for that. So, and everything else besides that, I mean, there's some decent ones here and there, but the main ones, like I kind of just highlighted here for you. Torture is definitely one I would pick up though, especially with all the sick bleeds that you have. So let's jump in and actually take a look at the skills that this mod has to offer. So, jumping into how you actually get these skills, there's actually a few different ways. If you start off right in the beginning, and you start right here, right after the shipwreck, you walk right over here, and then over here in this corner, there's actually a nice little chest here that has all the skills that you could ever want. Now, there is one vendor also in Fort Joy, but you do not have access to the vendor until you go all the way to Arcs, which is kind of a major complaint when doing this mod, seeing as most people have the mod that you just skip Act 1 because everybody and their mom's done it multiple times. So do keep that in mind that there is only one vendor and it's in good old Fort Joy and then in Arcs the city. So that is a little major complaint. Other than that though, everything else is pretty fine. You are able to get off all the skill books right at the start. So really awesome there. So let's jump in and actually look at these skills. So let's jump in and actually look at all the different skills we have here. So we obviously know the original ones that we had, but let's just kind of show what they look like in general. So first one is Corpse to Corpse, which basically allows you to just do a giant sort of charge based ability at them and having a chance to inflict a bleed. So as you can see here, it works similar to how a charge would work. Basically you come in, every target that you hit has a chance of bleeding if they don't have any sort of armor going forward. Next is Blade Dance, which is another way of doing it, where basically it works like similar to how some of the other abilities are out there, where it hits a bunch of different targets all at once. Additional targets have a chance of being chosen at random, so basically it's a nice little ability to basically hit multiple different targets in a small area and bounce around all over the place. Next is Daring Leap, which basically allows you to get a hasty sort of retreat. Either way, you knock down a targets where they land, so keep in mind that is resisted by physical damage. So this is a good way of also getting an alternative stun. So this is a way for you to travel across the battlefield, and if you combine that with some Scoundral stuff, you can really kind of bounce around and go all over the place where you really see fit. Next is Fleche, which basically just does a bunch of piercing damage and has a chance of doing more damage when they don't have physical armor. Next is the good old ability here of Dirty Gambit, which basically allows you a different type of damage to do, which is earth damage, which is resisted by magical armor. So good if you have a bunch of magical characters and you really want to destroy that magical armor and help them out a bit. Basically what it does is it has a chance of throwing dust at the enemy and blinding them, giving a different status effect, which is pretty awesome. And it has a chance of clearing off any of the surfaces and clouds when targeted at the ground. So good way of getting rid of some stuff, and as you can see here, it's a range based ability, so overall really nice. Next is Hors de Combat, which basically you slice through the enemy's leg and you basically deal a crap ton of damage, rendering them immobile for a turn and causing them to take damage if they try to move, similar to how some of the other sort of abilities that you have in the Scoundrel tree. Next is Disarming Cut, which basically just does damage and has a chance of disarming the target. So, really awesome there. As you can see, all these different status effects are pretty helpful, especially how every single one of these has like a sort of a way of getting a status effect on them. So, pretty awesome character so far. Next is Conte Sexte. I'm probably butchering that, but basically it's a way of doing a bunch of attacks on them. So what that basically does is it works like a whirlwind. And then of course we have Flying Cuts, which basically works where you're basically using like daggers and you can kind of just throw these projectiles at it. So if you have some targets that have physical armor that is destroyed and they're a little bit far, like those pesky rangers out there, you can still manage to get some damage on them and give them that bleed effect. Next is Engarde, or Engarde? On guard. I'm assuming that's what they're saying. Sorry, my pronunciations are terrible. But basically, you challenge an opponent to combat. If they lose, then you get a victory rush, which grants you healing and bonus damage. If they survive, however, you take damage instead. So this is like the challenge ability. But what it also does is it adds a taunted to them. So it makes that target focus on you. So make sure that when you use this ability, you know that you're going to be able to kill that target within the 3 turns, or you'll suffer a penalty. And then obviously Inspire is always a good one that comes with your human racial. Let's jump into a little bit more here. Alright, next we have good old Nimble Footwork, which basically allows your combat to brace incoming attacks, increasing your dodge by 100% and your movement speed by an additional 20%. This is crazy. So basically it gives you evading for 3 turns, meaning that you're able to really take care of anything that really needs to happen. It only costs 1 action point, it comes back every 4 turns, and it gives you movement speed increase. So with having all those points in Scoundrel, you can really walk across the battlefield with no problems whatsoever. That's why getting the thing like Escapist later on is going to be important, because you can dodge all those attacks of opportunity and get to whatever target you really desire to get at. Next is Sweeping Coupe, which basically you swing your weapon in a large wide arc, knocking any of the targets and enemies around it. So basically a nice little knockback here. So if I were to use it, it basically you choose your target and it does like a little arc in front of you. So pretty awesome there. Next we have an Source ability, which basically you focus your source powers through your blade, igniting it with the sheer force of convictions, basically empowering your weapon with Firebrand for 5 turns. Pretty cool so far. So, very powerful move. It's a little weird using it with a source point, but I do think that this is actually pretty worthwhile picking up. Redoublement, which basically allows you to overwhelm and you attack 5 times and with astonishing speed, and each attack does massive damage. Now, this is a powerful move. This costs 4 action points, so keep in mind that will take up most of your action points unless you do Lone Wolf. So, do keep that in mind, but this is a power play to really do some massive damage on a target, especially if you're using daggers and attacking from behind. Very helpful skill in the least. Next is Execute, where basically you walk up to a wounded target, after you do all that damage destroying their physical armor, and if they are below 30% life, you automatically kill them. Very cool, especially for the synergy going forward. So the next thing that we have here is our last ability here, which is a good old Last Stand, which basically you make your last stand, giving you immunity to death and dealing double damage for 3 turns. Mix that with the crits, so where you're already right now at the moment doing double damage with your crits, so you can get up to 4 times the amount of damage when you crit. So crit is very important, especially going forward. Now this can only be used once per encounter, so you can't just keep using Last Stand with multiple different source points that you get later on through Act 2. So especially going forward, it gives you double damage and a good old death resistance for 3 turns. Really powerful. Now there are some also awesome combos that you can do with these. So, for example, having it to where, you can do your on guard, and then you can have it to where you do your good old Last Stand, and then you can maybe use an additional point to give yourself Nimble Footwork, giving yourself high dodge, and giving yourself high movement speed, so you can get some quick attacks right on the target, being able to really get that double damage, and then the next 2 turns just dominate and destroy them as much as possible, and applying those bleeds so they take more damage over time. And then it mix it up with your opportunist, where if they run by, you do some damage. And on top of that, you mix that up with your necromancy, where you can add a different heals on the side. So I think overall that this mod really is good. I used it for Act 1 when I was playing with my friends, which you guys can check out my streams at twitch.tv/Datcoopguy. I do multiple streams where I test out these different mods and I play with my friends. Overall, this does get my stamp of approval. The only negative I have for this mod is the fact that there isn't a vendor in Act 2. It's all the way in arcs, but I do like the playstyle. Everything goes well together, everything feels powerful, you don't feel weak. It really goes well for the different characters, everything kind of coalesced together, so you have options for everything out there. Now, for party comp, I would highly suggest that you have either a ranger or a two-handed axe wielder, somebody that can do physical damage as well. Because when you partner that up with being able to really do some damage, you can really get into the full potential of that character, especially once the physical armor is done. So in a party comp with another melee or a range user, destroying the physical armor is very important, especially going forward. This does lack with magical enemies, so if you do face a magical enemy, they are kind of the bane of your existence, but every character has its flaws. So especially going forward, I really did enjoy this build, and I find that this mod definitely gets my stamp of approval because the gameplay alone is really powerful and it really gets into the philosophy of the character, which this does fully. So overall, really good mod. Alright guys, so that was our look at the Dualist. I hope you guys do enjoy that in my looks into the mods and showing you different ways of building those characters, different combinations, and overall how you kind of play the class. I really enjoyed this mod, especially with the newer creators. I think everybody should really support these newer creators out there, as there are like 2 major creators out there, which I've already covered in multiple different videos, that are really coming into the fray and really making really awesome classes. But this guy's relatively newer, so give him lots of love. Comment down below that you watched my video and that I recommended you to them, and just give them lots of love, because the creators out there that are putting work into this game are really making this game have a lot more longevity. Especially if there's ever a chance of Divinity Original Sin 3, it's nice to have all these different creators and mods out there, especially if there is ever any further development into another thing into the series. But overall, Divinity Original Sin 2, one of my favorite games out there. I mean, obviously I have over, I think, 600 hours down this game, but just know that I'm grateful for everybody that has joined me in my channel and helping me out through everything. I mean, we were able to smash past 1,000 subscribers, which is crazy to me, and it's endearing to my heart. And I want to just formally thank you guys for everything that you've done for me so far. It's really great just to actually see that I'm getting now paid for my passion of video games. Anyways, if you do like my content, be sure to subscribe, guys. There's so much more things coming into fruition pretty soon, and I'm doing a podcast where I talk to small creators and other influencers about how they got into the business. That's going to be hopefully coming out in March, maybe the end of February if I can get everything booked on time. But if you are a smaller creator as well and you would like to be on that podcast, let me know. I'm looking for really dedicated people with high energy for that podcast. Anyways, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you guys next time.